All right. Thank you for tuning in to Light Heavy Media on YouTube. My name is Anthony Tucker Poindexter. And if you're listening and you have any interest or curiosity in the subjects of being, time, mind, matter, spirit, religion, language, conspiracies, etc., then you're in the right place, because my special guest today, who I'll be interviewing in a moment, has reached out to me in order to share over 40 years of research regarding the historical corruption of diction, what he calls diction, or what most people refer to as language, as well as the global or cosmic conspiracy of which this former operation is a central branch. Just as I wield ontology and conspiracy research with which to help spread the light of Christ and His Word, Dezert-Owl, my guest, as a targeted individual, is anonymously disseminating the same methodology, with the only distinct yet dialectical difference in respective focus lying in language versus ontology, which, however, go hand in hand. So, without further ado, before we get into my questions for him, I would like to read a quick sort of self-introductory excerpt from Desert's writing called An American Classic Radio Interview, The Forbidden History, The Words That Kill, and Other Lost Writings by Dezert-Owl. The Signs of the Times Preamble. In essence, I discussed the history of the world and how the unseen hand has been running it from the very beginning of time, who they are, and how they have founded all of the first great civilizations that are found all around the world, about who the giants really were, and the ancient Aryan caste and slave systems, the priesthoods, the anti-gravity Vihamanas, the Earth-based misnomered UFOs, which are man-made, the control of all forms of communications, commerce, religion, mass media, pseudo-politics, etc. This is the grand deception that is used to control all of mankind, and all instituted through the three main religions of the world, in particular, used as their grand cover. Their cyber code has been revealed to me because I have become adept within the study of the ancient alphabets, communications, symbolism, religion, custom, law, cosmology, and mythology, not to mention the fallacy of today's political science and pseudoscience in particular. I can also define the true nature of their warfare, their shell game of bringing one civilization up for their temporary use and then taking it down for the next 500-year generational cycle, as symbolized by the classical phoenix. I discussed the ultimate in mind control, an ancient art, and the financial control, the secret societies, and their blood occult rituals, and how they wage all wars throughout all time, through the nations that they created, which are all imaginations, plantations, and mere corporations. They have taken blood oaths to surrender their self-will and mind to their blind goddess, who has demanded our blood from the very beginning of time. They communicate to their minions through the movies, TV, and print media, while I can see, read, and interpret most all of it. It all says that they are using us for our ingenuity, for our collective constructive labor, for experimentation, and, in the end, they intend to kill us all. They have given us full notice of what they are doing, and what they fully intend to do, while all of the general population, the sheeple, they merely go there to be entertained. The New World Order is the Old World Order from the beginning of time. There is a major cosmic natural disaster that is about to happen on Earth, and they know it, but they are cleverly leaving us in the dark. Hence the reason that they have built hundreds of underground bases all around the world. while they are leaving all the people to remain unprepared, uninformed, and above ground, so that when it comes, the mere 5% who will survive above ground will die from the weaknesses and disease that has been generated from all the poisons that they have been feeding us, from the chemtrails to the fluoride in the water, to tainted vaccines, to fake food, etc., etc. They have enslaved us all by clever means of deception, because we, most of all, are their cattle/chattel property, and because they merely wanted to harness our labor, what they always needed, which is what backs most of the world's currency through the birth certificate. But they are all through with us now. It is written in stone, as can be seen written in the Georgia Guidestones. To know the truth is to be empowered and to be prepared. We may not be able to stop what has been done and what is about to happen, but the innocent and the decent people on planet Earth deserve to know. Dezert-Owl, author of the Real Da Vinci Code, Entomological Dictionary. All right, so that was something that he wrote as a sort of introduction to his own work. So now, before I get into a few questions that I have for him to discuss over the next 45 minutes or so, are you there, Desert?
I'm here, Tucker. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my honor to have you. So are you ready to get into the first question? You have anything to say, or?
No, other than I think you're doing great work, and that's why I'm honored to be on your network, on your YouTube channel, and to share with you. I know you're a deep study and are attempting to figure out the great mysteries of life, and so it's fun to interact with somebody that is struggling when so many young people today are just simply into computer toys and superfluous nonsense that in the end will be their ruin, and it's very tragic. You, my friend, I expect that you will live forever, and I certainly, that's my prayer. So together we can help spread goodwill and higher thought around the globe on this venue. So it's really exciting to do that. Perhaps for the benefit of our listener, real quick, Tucker, I could just let people know they can be checking me out while they're listening in. So can I give out my website to my radio museum and my YouTube channel?
Absolutely, yeah. Anything you want to do?
Yeah, that way they can see my picture, my mug shot from
sure.
With my sunglasses. That's from United Truckers Defending the Constitution, 1996, 97. And by 1998, first of the year, it was all over, infiltrated by MI6 and local flunkies that didn't want the truckers to be organized and a positive force within America. My radio program on Sundays was called America's Driving Force, and I did it from all over the country, depending upon where my 18 wheels got me that particular Sunday. So they can find my radio museum. I did 6 years of broadcasting on my network because I kept getting jacked with on other networks. For some reason, it seems like those networks are run by somebody other than is claimed that being Christian patriots, and as it turns out that many of them, of course, are the opposition pretending to be patriots and or / Christian. So without naming them, of course. But so I created my own network so I could say it my way until finally I was taken down in the process by one of those wonderful double troubles that are everywhere, the trolls that are trolling. And so it's called The Real Public Radio.net. 3 W's dot, the, T-H-E, you have to have the word the in front of it, the Real Public Radio.net. And I've got 200 pages there of information. A lot of the YouTubes are now outdated or obsolete, but a lot of that stuff still works. The information type there is rather contemporary. I got a picture of the Great Flood on the news channel. Go through the news tab. You'll see the picture of the Great Flood. Nobody talks about, only me. Okay, I can't get over how well the grand deception has been played out on us because people still don't see what is right in front of them, and it's something that we can always talk about in the future as well, Tucker. And then my YouTube channel, if anyone wants to check it out, I'll be officially going live on the let's see, today's the 18th, on the 19th, tomorrow, Sunday night, here March, and I will be doing a live broadcast. I test streamed yesterday and today with some pre-recorded stuff I'll be doing that this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 days a week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And my YouTube channel is The Forbidden History Series. The Forbidden History Series. So check it out and subscribe. We want to have a few subscribers to get a custom link. We actually need 100 of them. So if you want to subscribe, sure would appreciate it. And feel free to touch base. Well, I'm trying to get a caller-generated program. So I want to answer your questions out there. I've already got 40-plus years, about 40, almost 48 years of study now behind me. I'm 60 years old. And so I've already figured most of it out, or I should say the Great Father has revealed it to me. I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I'm a visionary, and the Heavenly Father and His Son Yeshua, Mashiach, commonly known as Jesus Christ, has enlightened me and guided me down the lonely wilderness path for over 40 years now, and of research. And so I've got a lot that I want to share for all of you out there that haven't had the time or the ability or the prowess to begin to know how to unravel the great mystery. It is a miracle for me, I think, to have so much revealed and to pierce the veil and get to the center and the core of the onion where it's sweet. You want to cry the whole way through, but when you get to the center, there's no worries. And my famous quote, when they were trying to railroad me and I ended up on a concrete slab somewhere, looking at my life being taken from me, my quote was this: once we can begin to comprehend the true nature of things, then we can begin to comprehend that there is nothing really more to complain about. Okay, when you wake up to the truth, there's no more complaining. There is only giving of thanks and surrendering to the higher power and serving others. So, Tucker, thank you for that.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thanks a lot for going into all that. Before I go into these questions, it does bring to my mind, I just would like to mention to the audience that just so you guys know, Desert is one of the first true professionals to have reached out to me after I made my channel a few months ago in December. And he has just been such a great source of inspiration and motivation, just in terms of his wealth of knowledge and his ability to give his perspective on certain things that I might have questions on. So it's really just been I couldn't have asked for a better a partner or brother in Christ than him. So I just am really looking forward to doing more interviews with you in the future and sharing everything you have to offer. I'd also in a future interview, not in this one, but I would like to get more into your conspiracy experience in particular. We don't have to go into your personal story so much if you don't want to, but I know you do have a lot of anecdotes and a lot of secondhand experience with that subject. But anyway,
firsthand. And we do have one thing.
Yes.
Yeah, one thing in common. We both ended up with 2,000 books on the shelf, and that's rather unique. And but my story is not important, but I have learned some things of the do's and don'ts, especially
right.
from the judicial standpoint, because we have a corrupt system today that railroads innocent people. So those are things that are always worth talking about, just so people will know what the beast system is really all about and how to protect themselves. The do's and don'ts. One day maybe we can do that. It would be important. But you did tell people I was a TI. I normally don't advertise that or anything, but for anyone who doesn't understand what that or comprehend what that word means, it means simply somebody who is targeted. And since I exposed the CPS for their child kidnapping of my wife's three daughters at the time, 15 years ago, then that has, and exposed the entire county on occult ritual, sacrifice, sexual abuse, and selling babies on an international market. Was getting flyovers from the BATF there in the woods in East Texas, where they were getting ready to have another Waco. Had to escape, thanks to good friends, and relocate. But that seems to have followed me to a degree, because it's known that I did expose that criminal racket of pedophilia and sexual abuse and exploitation of children. So I'm honored to be a targeted individual by a criminal elite that think it's okay to abuse little boys and girls, let alone anybody in society. And that's exactly why. And you're a bit younger than me, Tucker. But when I grew up, they always used a cliche about America. They said it was the great experiment. But the truth is, freedom is not an experiment. And so it's a metaphor, subliminal, cliche that what they meant was the great experiment is you and I, the people, are the experiment, because the secret elite are operating behind the scenes through secret societies and destroying lives, manipulating them, ritual sacrifice, you name it. So there are about 2 million people under direct targeting by the government today. Some of it's quasi-military, some of it's other law enforcement, and also plainclothes military. They like Timothy McVeigh, who they claim blew up the Merrill building in Oklahoma City. He did not. The van did not do it. There was real detonating explosive devices placed in columns inside the Merrill building. That's why it blew halfway up. A truck outside couldn't have done that. And McVeigh was a retired. What he wanted to be was a Green Beret. And but they told him, no, we have another plan for you. We want you to resign from the military, and then we will covertly give you a paycheck, and you will work for the military as a plainclothes. And so you can be sure that a lot of the victims of targeting today are being victimized by a covert military experimentation. That's the great experiment, okay? So nobody is safe in a world like that, and the only thing we have left is to truly identify with our spiritual, etheric being, because that is all we have, is who we are, and to find the truth to transcend this world.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the way that you described the story of Waco when you told me that over the phone was really. I knew the story of Waco. I know the story of Timothy McVeigh, but your insights and the way that you tell it is really amazing. And I just hope that I'll be able to help you connect to my audience and to your the audience that you deserve, of course. I have my own experiences with abuse from childhood, and I know a lot of people who have been abused. So I definitely have a personal stake in that aspect.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Bill Cooper is one of my heroes, and I learned about the Timothy McVeigh story through how Timothy McVeigh went to Bill Cooper's house trying to kill multiple birds with one stone and bring Bill Cooper into the fold of this veteran terrorist psyop that they have going, and Bill didn't fall for it. He just asked them to leave, but eventually
that's a story I had not heard. Bill actually invited me onto his network after WWCR, Worldwide International Radio, Christian Radio out of Nashville, bumped him. He decided to create his own network, so he wrote me a letter inviting me on. That's when I had United Truckers back then, but I recanted and went another route.
Yeah.
And just the exposure for our young people to be exposed to pornographic images is bad enough. That is a crime in itself. They want to titillate the young minds and sensualize them by exposing them to all of these lewd graphics and perverted suggestive imagery. And the subconscious does pick it up. The mind control state has been perfected, and therefore nobody practically can claim to be a virgin today, in the sense that they've all been exposed inappropriately to a society, a type of a society that never existed before, at least for the most part, because we know that just 100 years ago, people dressed very modestly. Even when they went to the beach, the men didn't take off their shirt. They wore a T-shirt when they went to the beach. So things have changed quite a bit, and now anything goes, and it's the ultimate Sodom and Gomorrah, I guess. So to each their own, but I sure don't want people shoving themselves down my throat, and I respect their privacy to be what they want in private, but from a spiritual standpoint, we have to be pure, and we have to have all thoughts and intentions purified through reading Scripture and by application and serving others. So,
yeah, there is the occult science and there is the good science, and I do believe that we are working at the good science by trying to help the world reveal all things, so to speak. I believe that we've paid the price up to this point to reveal that information. So again, without further ado, I would like to get into the first question here, if you don't mind. I'm going to split it into two parts. I know that your main discipline is on language, and so I would like to start with language. However, I would like to preface my linguistic question with the custodians. So I'm going to be asking you, why did the custodians divide our language? What's the point of that? But before we get into that, I would like to just quickly ask you, who do you think are the custodians? What is the nature of our rulers? Where did they come from? Who are they, or what are they to you, in your opinion?
Sure. Well, I really digress. First of all, remember it's diction, and language is a phony word. It's corruption. It means something else. So diction,
right? Garbage,
or somebody, or the ancient tongue. So custodian. I'm just curious, Tucker. Where did you get the term custodian? Because I've not heard of it referred to. I think I know who you mean. But are you getting that from ancient writings?
That's my bad. I wasn't sure if you were familiar with that. That's from a book from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's basically just another term for the ancient rulers, the highest rulers. Some people believe that it's aliens. Some people believe it's demons. Some people believe it's angels. The whoever has authority, or who has ever been given authority of this planet, which many believe to be a malevolent force. So just your opinion on that identity.
Okay, well, I don't have an opinion. Okay, I have a view. I don't. Opinion is like an open onion. It makes you want to cry. Okay, because everybody has an opinion. But it is. And I don't use the word believe, because believe means to give little credit to something. It's Latin. So when they say I believe in Jesus, what they just said in the code was I give little credit to him. Okay, so we need to define words properly. And it's been a long time since I've read the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've read most all of them, and so that's one that I guess I forgot. But it implies, of course, the ancient watchers, and the only book that preserves the story correctly is the collection that came out of Ethiopia. And among the collection, there were two books called the First Book of Adam and Eve and the Second Book of Adam and Eve. And so, while Jerusalem was being sacked and burned, and other libraries around the ancient world, Ethiopia had a hub of the Hebrew race, because the ancient silk trading route went into Ethiopia, so they had their own temples over there and their own library. And so when Nebuchadnezzar finally did the final deal on destroying the temple and burning it, then that legacy was pretty well destroyed. So fortunately, Yahweh, the Great Spirit, Holy Spirit, preserved through other temples in other parts of the world the ancient writings. And so the first book and the second book of Adam and Eve are in a collection called The Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden. I'm going to be doing a book review every day on my network, by the way, and so that'll be one book I'll refer to at one point. And so in there, towards the end of the second book of Adam and Eve, we find, this is the propagation of the false story, because there's a steady stream of a phony story being propagated, and I know certain people that are propagating it big time, along with other fallacies, and therefore it's my contention that it is the priesthood / secret society / Zionist control that wants to deflect us from recognizing who we really are, and who these what you're calling the custodians out of the Dead Sea Scrolls is called the Watchers and other of our lost writings. And but they call them, you see, they're referring to these people as fallen angels. And so right out the gate, we got to throw away the word angel, because angel is not a part of our original scripture. It's a supplement by the Anglo-Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons. If you look up I have a Latin dictionary from the early 1800s, big dictionary, small words. And there in the back it says angel means English or Anglish. And the same in my Middle English dictionary, it's under angel, it says see English. Okay, those are the angels, the Anglo-Saxons. And so that's how they have supplemented our scriptures. They put themselves into our scriptures. Same with the word Jew. Jew does not belong in our scriptures. There are no Jews in our ancient past. That is not Israel. That is Khazarian. Jews are from the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains, and were a tribe, a primitive tribe like Allah Genghis Khan, a bunch of most disgusting nomadic creatures you'd ever want to have to face at night, okay, in the wilderness. And so, the people in Israel today are not Israel, bottom line. As it says in Revelations, there would be people who would call themselves Israel who are not. So we've got to, and thank you for allowing me to set the record straight on this, Tucker, because it's the answer is so simple. So simple when you find it written in a book, and you don't have to pray and fast and maybe go 40 days without eating to get a vision, because it's in a book. And so the miracle is that it was preserved at least in one place. So whereas they're calling these people fallen angels that mated with the children of Cain, well, first of all, we can imagine that with the exception of the great spirit of Yahweh, some call him Yahweh, but it's not a W, it's a V, Yahweh, obviously we know the Yahweh impregnated Mary with the pure seed of light, Yeshua. So we know that the Great Spirit could have, but it wasn't no type of intercourse. It was by the word that she heard, she trusted, and so the seed came through the hearing, and the resonant sound became the seed within her egg. Okay, that's how that happened. But this whole idea about invisible creatures, whoever they're supposed to be, come and then have an intercourse with a physical flesh woman, we know would be a biological impossibility. Most animals can't crossbreed with each other, only with a few exceptions. So, and they're all physical. So the point is that when you read the book of Adam and Eve, the second book, at the end, we find out that Enoch was on a mountain with about several hundred, maybe 1,000, maybe more. We don't know the exact number, but a society, a very small, tight-knit society of people that were worshiping Yahweh, the Great Spirit, and they were fasting like 20 days or 40 days, and then they would eat for 40 days, and that's how they lived, because they were totally monastic, they were totally connected with the One, and therefore they had all knowledge. It started with Adam. He was the Naga. If you look under serpent in the Strong's Concordance, you find out the serpent was called the Naga, and that was actually Adam, because he knew how everything in the universe operated. And so his legacy of his offspring all knew about the entire makeup of the entire universe, from the electrical energy, free energy, to the ability to create special breeds by crossbreeding, cross-pollination. Many of the food, much of the food that we eat today originated through them, through this concept of splicing and dicing and reconnecting plant particles and all of that. So it's quite a legacy in the story, but it's not being told correctly. And so what happened was, you have a group of people that live to be 1,000 years old, and they know about everything, and then it says that they went down and engaged, probably for commerce, with the children of Cain. They were obviously related. They were the children of Cain, who were the fallen ones that received the stain of blood. That would have been red hair, bright red hair, and spots all over their body, who we call the Irish today, are the remnant species of the children of Cain. The Phoenicians were also redheaded and spotted, and so even Buddha was redheaded and spotted, because he was a warfaring prince. So in the story, what it is we have the first 200 decide that they're going to go, and this is also in the book of Enoch, that they're going to leave the mountain. So Enoch, if you leave, you can never come back. And they said, that's okay with us. And so they came off the mountain, and they intermixed with the children of Cain. We're talking about a white, pure Aryan, blonde hair, blue-eyed stock in its pure form, mating with redhead spotted children, and that were cursed. So we have a people who are blessed mating with the people who are cursed. And the reason they're called angels and sky gods and sun gods is because of the makeup of their character: blonde for the light of the sun, white for the brightness of a star, and blue eyes for the blue sky. So that's why in these primitive findings, what we keep hearing about all these ancient civilizations, they were the sky gods, they were the sun gods, but yet they were earthbound because they were men and they were flying in anti-gravity vimanas, but they were earth-based, inner space ships, not outer space, because we are in a bubble and therefore we are earthbound. And so these were the Aryans because they knew about everything. They knew immediately how to build the great pyramid structures around the world, and they knew how to do metallurgy and to immediately get the metal ore and the mercury vortex engines to make and to charge them with a battery, and immediately these things lift off from the ground. And it says in the ancient Mahabharata and the other ancient writings of the Vedas that they shone in the sky like stars. And so while they're rowing their boats primitively, it's the ultimate. Again, it's the ultimate, the greatest show on earth, just like nothing new under the sun. They're rowing boats primitively around the world with their Hindu priests on them, and at the same time they're flying their vimanas to the top of their temples and their pyramids, coming out of the ship with blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin, and wearing tinseled gold, total gold in their garments. And you can imagine how they would sparkle in the sun, and people would say, they come down from the sun. They come down from the stars. Sure, it was a great mind control maneuver, to deceive primitive people who knew nothing, compared to what we know today and have access to with information. And so the first 200 watchers that fell, who you're calling custodians, they're actually a priesthood. Yeah. And if we read the Aquarian Gospel, which is actually the original Gospel, we find out that the first races were mentioned by Yeshua. And he said the first race was the white race, and but they came last according to coming to Earth. But what he was saying was that they said that they were the priesthood, and that they were so intelligent and knew how everything worked that they need not work, and therefore the redhead spotted, the children of Cain, would become the warfaring princes, and even the movie of called Jeremiah, when Jerusalem is sacked by Nebuchadnezzar and King Zedekiah is taken to the gate of Babylon with his two sons, and he witnesses his sons being put out, their lives being slaughtered right in front of him before his eyes are put out. The guy that comes out of the front gate, Nebuchadnezzar, who would have ever thought that he'd be a redhead spotted Irishman, right? But he was in the movie. That's because they're telling you in the movies the truth. They know these things. This is their legacy that they have preserved for them and have denied us access to this truth. So they, the first 200 of them took their blood oath at the base of Mount Horeb, Mount Hermon. They're in Syria, right on the Mediterranean shores, 11,000 feet, I think it is, snow-capped Mount Hermon. And so that's where the first blood oath occurred, and they said, we will dominate the world together. And that's how it all began. So if you're using the term custodians, well, they're not entitled to it, but they took control of the world through priesthood and religion, and they've been waging wars on us from the beginning.
That's amazing. Very interesting that you mention. So you mentioned the custodians as these white beings, this white priesthood who forced their way into this situation. You also mention Zionism, and you mentioned Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you.
I just want to say one thing about custodians. I don't know the context that word was used in, and therefore I'm making an assumption that I know what that word is being used for, Tucker. But still, I don't know the context, so I still stick with watchers and fallen ones. Not fallen angels, but fallen Malek. Malek was the word. That means the royal messengers. They were the royal messengers that were intended by Yahweh to come to earth to tell mankind that he was not an animal, but that he was of a divine order and that he could live forever. And that was their job, but instead they wanted to create a phony priesthood and deceive the world, instead tell the world the truth, okay?
Right. Okay, so now before I tie back into why they divided our language and why angels are angles or words or letters or archetypes in Kabbalah, which we'll get into, I just want to mention really quick, since you went into it a little bit, just for the listeners. again, you mentioned this white priesthood. You also mentioned Nebuchadnezzar. So for those of you who have seen the movie The Matrix, and those of you who have seen the movie Prometheus from the Alien series, in The Matrix you have the whole prophecy of the one breaking this mold of the virtual illusion, but you also have the symbolism of Morpheus and Nebuchadnezzar, who Nebuchadnezzar goes back and forth to Zion, which is like their utopia or whatever outside of the Matrix, which is just interesting. That all ties into what you're saying symbolically. It kind of just supports it that Hollywood knows about this and they're showing us. In the movie Prometheus, they apparently these alien monsters are a biological weapon that was planted here intended to wipe out humanity or wipe the slate clean. And the Prometheans are this white priesthood, this very technologically advanced, completely pale white, like over 8 feet tall, and they wear these hoods like a priesthood, right?
Yeah.
And so they just have a malevolent agenda for humanity. And so again, what I mentioned this, and I want to just ask this before we get into the words as it relates to these things and why they're so interested in corrupting our language. So. Yeah. So why would the white priesthood go ahead?
No, I wanted to just give evidence of what I said about the fallen watchers can be validated. How they can validate it? Okay.
Right. Okay.
Okay. You're not going to forget your question, right?
No, I got it all written down.
Good deal. Good deal. Okay. So I want to because I remember we all came out the gate the same way. In other words, so many of the things you follow. Or once followed, and like our listeners, the way we come into the world, we all been told the same story, and so we all on the surface bought into whatever was told to us and accepted it as true until we began to wake up and look and do our own investigation. And so, in other words, when I used to read the scriptures and it talked about giants, I thought it meant men of renown. I couldn't have imagined there could actually be a species of a human on Earth that could be 10 feet or 20 feet, even 36 feet tall as the extreme being mentioned. And so I did a study on YouTube for about a month and a half, and I tried to find every documentary, every video I could find on the giants around the world, and I saw the pattern. Okay, first of all, I was convinced that, they were really giants on Earth. And on average, they were probably 15 feet tall on average, but many of them were 8 and 10 feet tall, and many of them also had heads that were elongated, showing that they must have had a superior intellect of some sort. I'm not acknowledging them to be, in other words, here it is. Okay, the ones that in fact, what was interesting, the ones in Greece, in India, and in the Americas, like in Death Valley, 50 of them in a cave, all of them disappeared after they're discovered. But the ones that were preserved, like the ones in Cocoa Beach, Florida, in a bog, when they dug them up, and the ones in South America, the ones next to the pyramids that are hiding in China, that the mummy, they were mummified. These that had their, like in the bog, had preserved, they all had one thing in common. Do you know what it is, Tucker? I don't know if we talked about this or not. You know what they had in common?
We may have. I do not recall, no.
Okay. Well, they all had red hair, and they all had white skin, which shows that they were a crossbreed between an Aryan and a redhead spotted Celtic.
Wow.
There you go. The evidence speaks. In other words, it's all about forensics, right? If you show me the evidence, I can buy into it. And therefore, I was now convinced that the giants were real, and that they in fact, I did a transliteration from the Mahabharata, one chapter, a book that was done in the 1800s from the original, and I could see they weren't telling us the whole truth. In other words, I'm so adept into the words, I realized that he didn't give us the correct translation, transliteration, and therefore I went into it, and it's in my email, and I can send it to you. But basically, what it said in there in the Mahabharata, that in their anti-gravity craft, they flew the giants all over the world, and that they could move giant blocks. Okay? The
Okay.
Aryans. The Aryans
Yeah,
flew
I
them
get
around
you.
the world. They were their puppet kings. They were the ones very
Oh,
often that sat on the throne, and that's why they have these giant temples where a giant could walk through in like Egypt, right? You know a giant could walk in there, it's so tall, right?
yep.
You can just imagine a giant walking out the front door of those temples. That's his house.
Wow. Yeah.
And you get
Makes
100 giants. You get 100 giants, and you can move those giant megalithic stones and ball back. What are they called? The trilithons. These giant blocks of stone that are cut square for the foundation stones, and they're like the size of a building. If you tilted them upright, they'd be like a skyscraper practically.
Right.
That,
Yep.
you know, an office building. So these things so big. But if you had 100 giants, you could move them. You know, I'm not saying they didn't use sound resonancing as well to create anti-lift capability, but with
They
giants
did.
alone, you could do this stuff, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? They do love to put creatures through labor, so it all goes hand in hand. You know, you can't negate one theory by the existence of another. They kill many birds with one stone, and they can do anything they want, and they do. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to this. There's many things going on that are worthy of exploring to illuminate the whole picture. But yeah, there are countless giant burial grounds just in America. The Native Americans apparently have all these sacred sites where giant skeletons have been uncovered just in America alone. And one of my favorite shows from the 90s, Twin Peaks by David Lynch, who does really good movies kind of exposing the revelation of the methods of Hollywood and stuff, kind of like They Live sort of stuff. But anyways, he had a series in the early 90s that went into the Black Lodge of the Masons and how the history of Lois and Clark is related to discovering dark native shamans who were related to giants and white natives and all that interesting occult stuff. So I'm definitely familiar with the giants and interested in it. There's also an interesting story recently of Afghanistan soldiers finding a giant and killing it in a cave, which I don't know if that's real or not, but there's definitely a lot of anecdotes out there.
I'm just north of the Serpent Mound here in Ohio, in central Ohio, and there's giant relics down there as well. They may have been the ones to build the build the Serpent Mound, but it has a geometrical geometry that speaks about creation. I remember seeing the presentation on it, but I don't remember the facts on that. But yet there's artifacts in Hebrew, and I found out that in the town Newark, just south of me, Newark, Ohio, there's a museum with many of these artifacts, and these stones are etched with Hebrew. So this was evidence that at the time of the Phoenicians, that the priests of Israel were coming over with the Phoenicians, and that's why Israel changed the name Yahweh or Yahweh and into Adonai, because Adonai backwards is India, but the other way they call it Adonai, and so the Phoenicians and both the Hebrews priests were worshiping Adonai, and which backwards is India, but when I read about the god of the Phoenicians being Adonai, it said that he demanded blood. And so the blood drinker supplemented Yahweh in the Hebrew tradition, showing a full takeover of Israel way prior, and that's why they rejected Christ, Mashiach, and nailed him to the cross, because they were more interested in commerce, could care less about spirituality. They're in it for the money, honey. Okay, and so the town Newark, south of me, I saw the code. Okay, because this is how they're covering the trail, because the Secret Handshake Club, they know the true history, and they're hiding it from us, and they control our schools, and they control politics and everything else, and so and education. So the town Newark is actually Newark, and just right next to Newark, Ohio, is Zanesville, and Zanesville is another cover for the original word because it's Zionsville, or the village of Zion, and that's how they tricked the words and changed the words a little bit so we don't get the picture, Tucker.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm very much interested in like forbidden archaeology and stuff that's not accepted by the mainstream, and sites like that, like you're talking about just south of you. Another really interesting one is in, I guess, eastern Texas, where one of my favorite conspiracy theorists, Josh Reeves, he's done work where there's this big wall that's underground, slightly above ground, and it's just absolutely massive, and the government doesn't let anyone go there, check it out. But when anyone goes on like a hike around it, they'll report like loss of time. Yeah. Like hours will blink by in a second when they look at their watch the next time, sort of stuff. And what he knows about it is that it's a big ancient wall with ancient rare combinations of minerals, of crystals and stones, and it seems like some sort of ancient technology structure, right? And you have many of these sorts of things, not just at the surface of the Earth's crust. You have really interesting similar structures located, buried within 100-million-year-old sediment, or tens of millions of years old. These layers of the Earth's crust that are anything that's in there is millions of years old, and you have human artifacts in there. So that's all very very interesting.
Right, like
we can get into
sledgehammer found in a coal deposits in California near the
exactly.
border. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think you answered. Sorry. I think you answered my question. I was going to ask next before we got into language, which was why would the white priesthood, who was apparently or why would this race, who was apparently better off than the red-haired spotted race, why would they breed with them? Did they breed with them so that they could create a slave race who was capable of the labor yet smart enough to achieve it but still subservient to the whites?
Right. And by the way, just before I answer that, I just want to say, because we're talking about the great lies, and we're talking about how it all started. And so the great lie is about how it all started. And then why do they keep covering up all of the evidence of the ancient past? Is because it takes a million lies to cover the first lie. And so now we see lies everywhere. And they're constantly trying to cover up our true origin, because they've already lied to us, and therefore, but yet, thanks to our internet and modern technology, it's so far out of the gate now. Maybe they know because our world is about to shift again, and maybe a great catastrophe is going to occur. We'll find out, but that to me is the reason they built all these underground bases, because they know something big is going to happen up above ground. And because they're certainly not afraid of us. But to answer your question, first of all, we have a breed stock called the children of Cain, who were related to Hadam and Kaiva, and that which is the original word for Adam and Eve. And part of it's in the Strong's Concordance. Just go look it up. The other half of their names are in the Strong's. And they gave us the one half, and the other half is in there literally. And you just bring it forward to modern letters. So they were related, number one. And it's just that Cain received the stain of blood for killing Abel, his brother, or Bel, perhaps most correctly pronounced, because the A is a consonant, so it's actually Bel was his name.
Okay.
Go figure. Okay, that's another story for another day. But so because they knew all things, and then it turns out that the children of Cain, being an outcast, were therefore remained primitive, did not have access to the great Aryan knowledge of the infinite knowledge of the universe that the Aryans possessed. He was an outcast, and therefore they were engaged with them in some form of commerce, and because their tongue, their ability to communicate was the same, because obviously the Africans spoke another form of tongue or communication or diction, and certainly more primitive. It certainly wasn't Indo-Germanic, and so they could immediately communicate and engage in commerce, and that's why it said they were getting enticed, because what was happening, as we read in the books of Adam and Eve 1 and 2, is that they started, the children of Cain were becoming interested in the watchers up on the mountain, who, after several generations, who are these people, these white-skinned, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, these beautiful, tall, and handsome. And so they were using the women, actually, as an enticement. What they were doing were having horse races at the bottom of the mountain where they were staying, and then it said that the women were making themselves up. I mean, I'll tell you, from a guy standpoint, I think red-headed spotted women are very exotic and beautiful. It's a very exotic beauty. It's not like the normal beauty of regular women, but to me, the red-head spotted woman has, to me, captures the psyche from a guy standpoint, and I find it very attractive and very beautiful. So I could not. Go ahead.
A fair-skinned Irish woman is very beautiful. I agree.
Yeah,
if that's what you're saying. That's one. I don't like to have favorites, and I love all people, and everyone's beautiful. But I've always had a special place in my heart for fair-skinned Irish people. Yeah.
In other words, we would call it the spots being the leprosy, and you see now that goes into the mythology of the leprechaun, because leprechaun it means the leopard king or the spotted king, and didn't the leprechaun the spotted gold? Right?
What's that?
Because they were the puppet kings, so the spots is called leprosy, and that's where we get the term lepra. Khan.
Yes.
Because Khan is king, and so it's the leopard king, the spotted king, and that's my story that I'm sharing with you, is that they became the front organization for the priesthood. They became the puppet kings, but they used the giants if they were, useful to be puppet kings as well. But after the giants were gone, then it was more the red-headed spotted, and these obviously the spotted red-headed men could wreak terror in any people. Could you imagine a group of Phoenicians, all redhead spotted, landing on your shore, jumping off the ship totally naked with all their spots all over their body, running at you with their battle axes? It'd be pretty frightening, right? I think I'd be running the other way. And this is where they get the term going berserk, because one battle axe could take on 2 or 3 swords. One Phoenician alone with his battle axe would be willing to take on 10 men. He'd take off all of his clothes and say, "Come and get me." And because they not only could craft a ship with an axe, but it was also the primary weapon. One of the secrets of technology that nobody talks about. But that's where the term going berserk comes from. It's the berserker battle axe. We see the axe in Washington, D.C., on both sides of the speaker's podium, where they got what they call the fashai, the bundle of black ebony rods with the battle axe in the middle. That's where it goes back to. That's what I'm talking about. The fashai, the crafting of the ship, the true tree sons. The treason comes from tree sons, those who crafted the ship. So, but back to the story. So the women. So what the children of Cain were doing was saying, "Look, let's get these these beautiful men down here, and so let's dress our women up in jewelry and let's wear very little clothing." And so the watchers are looking down, saying, this looks pretty interesting. And so their psyche is playing tricks with them now. So it wasn't just like they automatically decide, "Hey, let's overthrow, Yahweh and Yahweh and conquer the world," but they were being enticed by these primitives. And so as they're engaging in commerce, finally some of them fall victim to it, right? The sensuality. Bad enough, you got all knowledge, and that's quite a head trip, but then you got all the hormones in you like everybody else. And then so what happened was there was an intercourse that occurred, and then finally the watchers go back up home like nothing happened and talk to their brothers and say, "Look at, man, these women down there, and they're asking for us, and these people are so primitive. We can clean up shop. We can get them to go to work for us, and we can start building things and set up shop and let them serve us, and man, you know what I'm saying?" And so that's the simple way of describing what ultimately happened. And then finally the other watchers, after the first 200 went down, and all of a sudden the only ones left on the mountain are Enoch, but he's taken up after when he was 365 years old. He's taken up, and so the only ones we have left that we have a record of is Methuselah, and then Noah, and his family. And there may have been a few more, and they're just not written in the record. But basically, all the watchers finally went down the mountain and fell. And when you got 1,000 men that lived to be 1,000 years old, that's a million years worth of knowledge, and I don't think you need aliens to come down and tell them how to do stuff.
Right. All right. Well, let's see here. That reminds me, all that talk about trees and berserkers, battle axes. I've been reading Norse mythology, the mythos of the Vikings, the ancient Swedes in Norway, Finland, etc. They had a really epic encounter with the Christians in Ireland and Britain at some point in history, but even before then, it seemed, I don't know if you're familiar with their mythos, but I'm pretty sure they adopted the mythic shipbuilding, the woodcutting, the berserker warrior mentality of the Druids and stuff. The Vikings did, so that's where I'm familiar with that. And they have a very consistent mythology.
Yeah, I studied universal mythology, and I almost got to read, was it Beowulf? I started reading Beowulf, but then my divorce happened, and the rest is history. So. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we only have like 5 or 10 minutes left before the hour, and then I have to sign off for this interview. So maybe we can save the second half of the first question, which is going to go more into the language conspiracy of what these custodians are doing. So instead of going into that, I think I just would like to just ask you a quick, shorter question, if that's okay with you, before we wrap up. Okay. So this is something that I asked you last time I gave you a call, and so I just wanted to share your perspective on it, just as something extra to close with. So again, why would you say that the cross, the holy symbol of Jesus on the crucifixion, why is that in your mind a negative symbol?
Okay.
If you don't mind elaborating on that real quick.
Right. Well, if you're talking about Jesus, are we talking about the healing Zeus? Because Jesus is Zeus. If we're going to talk about words and diction, then we have to be honest about the words. And Christ
absolutely
is the law is the T is silent, and so Christ is Chris, and it's an abbreviation for Krishna. And so we got Jesus Christ is the healing Zeus, Greek mythology, and then Christ is the ancient Hindu mythology of Krishna, and that's how they've tricked us. It's okay. In other words, when I came into my spirituality, I was serving Jesus Christ, and because the beauty of our Great Spirit is that He wears the mask, and therefore it doesn't matter if you had a pure heart and you only knew His name is Bob, He would answer you, okay? Because He resonates with your purity, with your sincerity, and with your willing to be a servant and serve your fellow man at the same time. So the name trick was played on us, and so I still mention Jesus and use those words, but I digress and prefer to go to Yeshua, which is in the middle ground, because I can go further on the etymology. But Yeshua is the one that most people recognize today as being the original from the Greek Jesus, which they know means Isis, the eye of Zeus, or the healing Zeus. Let me get my thought back. So the cross, so it's being touted. Sure, I think one of the best examples I should mention first with the Vatican and the Catholic Church is because they like the guy that is still nailed up to the cross, and that's why their crucifixion, which is I probably shouldn't have said it that way because people use that in a negative context, but I used it that way because they're the fiction. The Vatican is the fiction. It's Lucifer clothed with the light, but she has no light. And so they would like Yeshua still to be nailed up there permanently, but yet He's not on the cross anymore. He has risen from the dead. He has come back, and He rules. All power was given unto Him, and He said, I am with you always, even unto the end of the earth. They even deceived the people with the second coming, because they got people thinking, well, I know He's coming sometime down the road. Wait a minute. He came back. He rose from the dead. He said, I am with you always, even unto the end of the earth. And so He comes as spirit when somebody is ready to receive Him. So as far as the symbol goes, He was the Y. He was the Y that was nailed to the X, because a cross is also an X. And X means destruction, right? So a T can also be turned over 90 degrees and it becomes an X. So it's a dual symbol. And that's why the alphabet ends X, Y, Z. And but the T was also at the end of the alphabet, depending upon which one you're talking about. That's another story. When we get into alphabets, we can talk about another day. But basically, the cross is a symbol of, it is a symbol of navigation, by the way. That's where the Celtic cross is as the perfect circle within the cross center, and that if you took the long end of that cross, which would be the bottom that we see is put in the ground, if you use it for navigation with the plumb bob, you point it up into the sky to sight the star, and then there's little notches on the circle, and the plumb bob goes straight down, and you know what degree you are at in relationship to what you're looking at in the sky. And so in other words, the fact that he's nailed to a cross, if we regarded it as the ancient symbol of navigation, well, it implies to where we all can go. We can navigate to the Great One who made all things. But from another standpoint, so it's not only a symbol of navigation, but it is and that's the positive one, but then it is a symbol of a sword for destruction, and the fact that the cross was used for mutilation and torture of thousands of people in Israel, let alone other parts of the world, that is a symbol of torture and cruelty. And therefore, what we have is the positive symbol, Yeshua, with his arms up like the Y, which is the first letter of yellow for the color of the sun. And that's why we have the word Yah, because for the yellow of the sun, it's more correctly Yah, meaning that which goes round, the sun goes round with the earth. And so he's being nailed. So the light is being nailed to the darkness in the metaphor, because the cross is the symbol of the darkness, because it's their symbol. That's why they put it on top of every building. But yet Yochanan, John, told us in the end of 1 John, he says, my little children, have nothing to do with idols or images, because they are corrupt. So it's called the symbol of the black sun or the dark sun, meaning it negates, because the original positive symbol was a straight line, because that's where you get conductivity, in a straight line. The minus symbol is the original positive, and then when you draw a line through the middle of it, creating what we call the plus, it's actually a negative, because it negates the flow of free energy once you cross the line. And so that's how they tricked us again with another line.
Okay.
Okay?
Perfect. Thanks a lot for going into that for me and for the audience.
Absolutely. Do you have any contact information you need to give out, Tucker? Because I know I'm helping you out. You're doing a great job. I got to tell you, you're doing a fantastic job as hosting, being a radio host. I think this is your first experience, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the first time I'm doing this, and well, I'll get better at it as time goes on, and I'm really looking forward to completing my series with you and just, going until we can't go anymore.
You impressed me with your presentations. I just couldn't wait to touch base and say hello and give you kudos for doing what you're doing. It's not an easy thing to put yourself out there on an iPhone to the rest of the world and talk.
Right.
And I hid behind a microphone. So you are very brave in your attempt to try to make a difference in our world and to share. So it's a very noble thing that you've been doing. And
thank you. Well, I was originally planning on. I was going to mention one thing at the end about the computer, but actually, just so everyone knows, I know I just told you, but one of my listeners had a dream last night where he had a vision where he felt it was his divine or holy duty to build me a computer and send it to me. So I'm going to be receiving that in a month or two. This guy makes custom computers, and he's a fan of the channel, so he's going to reach out and do that for me in the channel. So that'll be really good. I'm going to get a cheaper one in the meantime, but I was going to mention that, but now that that's pretty much all set, I'll just let you say what you wanted to say about your own advertising, your own material, or whatever you wanted to say, and then we'll just sign off until next time. Yeah,
well, thank you, because I was just thinking, if anybody out there values the work that Tucker and I are doing here today, and my lifetime of research to try to bring forth truth, I have now discovered the works of Joseph of Arimathea, the great uncle of Yeshua, and it's I've actually several works, but the one that's most important, I've done a rough, well, actually it's almost finished. It's a transliteration from Old English, and it was on bronze sheets, and it's called the Book of Wisdom. So I need to raise funds in order to be able to publish the first 100 copies, short run them. And so if anybody does want to make a contribution or a donation to my ministry, then they can go to therealpublicradio.net. That's the T-H-E, okay, three W's dot, therealpublicradio.net, and then go to the contact page, and then you'll see, scroll down and you'll see my email, or I'll give you my email right here. It's contact@freeamericaradio.com. That's contact, all normal spelling, contact at free, as in freedom, freeamericaradio.com, and it will go to publishing the book, and I'm just grateful to the Heavenly Father above to have a voice to speak. It's quite a burden to know so much and to realize that we have a psychopathic and an occult world that hates our guts and ultimately wants to kill all of our friends and family. But that's the way it's always been. There has always been war, and there may not have hardly ever been a legitimate war, unless it was some people that were trying to fend them off, to just be alone and to be free spirited people. But the battle has always been on since the Watchers took control of the world. They trap themselves in religion, put on the guise of lovey-dovey, when the truth is they hate our guts, and they're following the Babylonian Talmud, all the court system, and it goes through Kabbalistic Zionism and banking. They are all. That's why they've stolen houses from all of our friends, defrauded them in the mortgage deal. They controlled the funny money, the fraudulent reserve notes. So the grand scheme is on us. It's waged against us. The battle would be throughout all time with the false messengers. That's what the ancient scripture meant in Genesis when it talked about the Phoenician god King Malek. That Amalek, he was called Amalek, and what Amalek means is false messenger. And in Genesis it said that our battle would be with the false messenger, Amalek, throughout all time, and that's what it meant. Okay, so we're dealing with the fallacy of all the things we learn, and having to come to terms with the reality and the truth as it unfolds. That's why we're here. Don't forget, anybody can hear me. I'll officially be live starting Sunday night, March 19th, 2017, on YouTube. The YouTube channel is The Forbidden History Series. Do a search, and it should be at least at the bottom of the page. We're just not getting numbers yet. We're just starting, so we'll be up the rank very soon. I hope. The Forbidden History Series, and my other network is therealpublicradio.net. So I'm willing to respond back if anyone writes, and I'll certainly send you a thank you. And for any size donation, actually, I'll send you a PDF of my Real Da Vinci Code Etymological Dictionary, 300 pages, 8.5 by 11 on PDF I did in 2011. It was a prototype to the dictionary I now have in the back of the Book of Wisdom. So any donations will be a credit towards getting your book as well. I'll keep your donation as a record, and when the book becomes available, we'll do what we can to credit that part of it for your donation. Okay, so we'll see how things go here, and if we can't make history, being a part of history, Tucker, thank you so much.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So in our next interview, I will get into the second half of my first question, which is going to be about why do they divide our language, and why is language such a significant part of this conspiracy and this control system. And yeah, I guess I will mention actually that, just so you guys know, my YouTube channel right now is called the Elect User, ELECT space USER, but I'm going to be changing it as soon as possible to Light Heavy Media. That's light space heavy space media. And yeah, you can search that with youtube.com/Light Heavy Media once that gets set up as soon as possible. But yeah, besides that, I just want to thank everyone for listening. Please like and subscribe on my YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. And yeah, that's it. And thank you, Desert, for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me, Tucker. We'll talk later. Bye.